Thank you. So for the record, I did, the design team asked to meet with me to discuss the changes that they made to the plans. So I did have that meeting with them through a Zoom meeting. I'm not quite understanding. I feel like the last meeting was pretty clear about how we felt about this development, and I don't feel like it's really been interpreted. I think it's like, for some reason, one of the issues that we had, or that I brought up, was it was classified in the documents as a commercial development. So I had said, I think that's misleading because you only had 24,000 square feet of commercial, which is essentially like a Chick-fil-A. So, and then you piled all these homes in there. And then, so I think it's misleading to put on documents, paperwork people read and look at and call it commercial development because, if it was commercial, I'd be like, heck yeah, but it's not, it's houses. So then somehow that got interpreted that we didn't support commercial, which that's not the point I was making. I was saying I didn't feel like that was a fair classification of this development. So for me, when everybody went through the presentations, like nobody said, we're talking about 461 units. 461 units on 31 acres. I mean, like nobody said it in the, in that plane of terms. So the point that I made, I don't know if the planner can come back up and put the land use document back up. So the comment I made last time, and I believe Council Member Askew agreed with me, is low density residential seemed to be what was compatible in the area. I don't want to speak for you, Council Member Askew, but I thought that was the point that we had made. When you look to the north, the east, the south, and the west.
Yes, there is low density surrounding it. However, it's low density county, which again is a much higher density that we have in St. Cloud. It's up to 8 dwelling units per acre, which actually corresponds with our higher side of our medium density residential.
And they're proposing what, 14 units to the acre?
14 units
right.
per acre.
So when I had my meeting with the developers, very nice people, and I know they've got a job they're trying to do. But I kept getting told, like, but we could have done this, like we should be lucky that it's only 14 because we could have done 18 or something like that. And I said, what you're assuming, I'm giving you high density residential. I mean, that's what you're assuming. So for me, this is way too intense. I agree with the comments that everybody made. If you look at this map, you see it's low density all around it. The argument that the design team made to me was, well, everybody else's land use is going to change. Well, that's not necessarily true. I think it's way too intense. 461 units on 31 acres. It's not something I'm supporting. Another point I wanted to make was the impact fees are cheaper for apartments and townhomes. That was one of the issues I had asked the city manager to look into that. So just keep that in mind. So the amount of impact fees that this is bringing in was mentioned, but it's a discounted impact fee compared to single-family residential.
Thank you. For the record, I did meet with the Larson folks on a Zoom meeting to try to get a grip of what we're building here. At first, I think I was really sort of against the whole project, and then don't want to get into details, but I spent some time in the hospital area and met a lot of the folks in there. And what they were telling me is like housing prices are so crazy, no one can buy a house here. So I was like, where do you live? We live in Lake Nona. So they come here and then they drive back. So it's like we don't really have. And then I'm like, where's the last time we built apartments in St. Cloud? I think it was Sawyer down on Old Canoe Creek Road, wasn't it?
Aren't apartments approved in Nolte, off of Nolte?
Right.
Stevens Plantation?
So what I'm getting at is like they're not for me. I'm not a big fan of that, but I'm also you start to learn a little bit more about the younger generation, and they can't afford a house right now, especially now. And where they live, you ask a lot of them that come to our shop and things like that, and they all live in Lake Nona, but they work here. And so it's like we're not offering them a product that a young professional can take. And I'm sure there's probably even city staff that make enough money that are like, okay, I'm not sure if I'm going to stay here the rest of my life. I really can't afford a house at this point. I would like to get an apartment. We really don't offer that here, so I'm open to that idea.
On the parking side of things, with townhomes, I'm fine with 3.5 units per acre. I think we've seen multiple studies that have shown, I think it's only in the 2s that people actually utilize, because if you have that extra parking, the garage becomes the junk storage, and then the street becomes the parking. And then 2 units per acre, I'm personally fine with. I don't remember what the request was.
It was for 2 units where the requirement's 2.1.
2.1, okay. On the traffic side of things, I will agree, Narcoossee, I'm surprised no one mentioned Boggy Creek, with the schools that opened up on Boggy Creek, just creating a nightmare there. With respect to the density conversation, we do need a transition of densities when we get from commercial nodes, then you go towards residential that has higher density than medium and then low. This is an area that just, for whatever reason, when this beginning part of the corridor developed, it just didn't have any high density residential on it. We did R1B, it looks like, for that first neighborhood, and then just it doesn't transition right from the commercial node by the Publix, Winn-Dixie, all of that. So it's just kind of some of the mistakes of the past of our comprehensive planning that hopefully we can fix in the future as we're going through our comprehensive plan and our future land use
And so
update.
on. I do disagree that we don't need apartments in our area. We've heard that that's a huge issue. We do need apartments. Not everyone can afford to buy a home. And you know who's moving to this area? Our children and our grandchildren. And most of them can't afford to buy a home, so you know what they do? They move in with you guys or us guys until they can afford to either find a place that they can rent, which is virtually non-existent here in the St. Cloud area. So they stay with us until they can either buy a home that they can't afford. And can't tell you the young people I know that have bought homes because they wanted to get into something. There was no rental available. And so now they're just strapped to the gills trying to pay a mortgage that really has them strapped. What's also interesting about new growth patterns, when you read what's happening in the future in the building industry, so many of our children and our grandchildren, they love apartment life. They certainly love, they're moving into them by the droves because they like that kind of life. They don't want to have to cut the grass. They don't have to take care of maintaining the homes. It's certainly a huge need. I'm certainly concerned about the density of this particular set of apartments, but I certainly think it's a huge need that we have. I love the townhomes, at least ones that are being proposed in the pictures that we saw. I do believe that we need to provide the parking that certainly is demanded by the city and recommended by our staff.